At one time, Deshaun Watson was one of the best quarterbacks in the league. However, 4 years later, Watson is now one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. Life comes at you pretty fast, especially in just a matter of a few years. Ever since he was accused of multiple sexual assault charges, he has now transformed into a terrible quarterback. It's amazing how Watson went from the top to the bottom so quickly. Not to mention a few weeks ago, he was once again charged with more sexual assault charges from a few years ago. We will dive into what happened with Watson, his rise, his struggles, his utter fall from grace, and what is the future for both Watson and the Cleveland Browns. Watson came to Clemson in 2014 as a highly touted 5-star recruit out of Gainesville, Georgia. Even as a freshman, his talent was very evident. He became the starter midway through his freshman season and showcased his dual threat abilities. Watson finished his first year with over 1,400 yards passing, 14 touchdowns, and only 2 interceptions despite missing time due to injuries. He displayed flashes of brilliance, but it was in his sophomore and junior years where he truly became a superstar. In 2015, Watson exploded onto the national scene. He passed for 4,104 yards and 35 touchdowns, while rushing for over 1,100 yards and 12 more touchdowns. Clemson went undefeated in the regular season, and Watson led them to the playoffs and then the championship game against Bama. Though Clemson lost 45-40, Watson's performance was historic, passing for 405 yards and 4 touchdowns, while adding another 73 rushing yards. He was a Heisman finalist and firmly established himself as one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. Watson entered the 2016 with unfinished business. It was clear that Clemson had one goal: to win the title. He continued his dominance, throwing for 4,593 yards and 41 touchdowns while rushing for 629 yards and 9 more scores on the ground. His leadership on and off the field was very pivotal to Clemson's success. He finished runner-up for the Heisman behind Lamar Jackson. Once again, Clemson reached the championship game to face Alabama in a rematch. This time, however, things went differently as Watson delivered one of the most iconic performances in college football history. Down 31-28 with just over 2 minutes left, Watson orchestrated a masterful drive culminating in a game-winning touchdown pass to Hunter Renfrow with just 1 second remaining. Clemson won 35-31, securing its first title in 35 years. Watson threw for 420 yards and 3 touchdowns while rushing for another 43 yards and a score, earning offensive MVP honors for the championship game. Watson finished his Clemson career with over 10,000 passing yards, 90 touchdowns, and 26 rushing scores in just 2.5 seasons. His ability to rise in the biggest moments, combined with his poise and leadership, made him one of the Clemson's most legendary players. He was a 2-time Heisman finalist and was a key figure in Clemson's rise to national prominence in the Dabo Swinney era. Deshaun Watson's legacy is remembered not just for the stats, but for his clutch performances in the championship run that put Clemson football back on the map. Watson decided to leave for the NFL after his junior season. He was projected to be a first-round pick and maybe even a top 10 pick. Watson, along with Mahomes and Trubisky, who at the time was a dark horse to be the top quarterback in the draft class. Watson ended up being the 3rd quarterback taken in the draft behind Trubisky, who was selected by the Bears with the 2nd pick, and Mahomes by the Chiefs with the 10th pick. The Texans traded up with the Browns, ironically, to select Watson at 12th overall. They hoped he would become the franchise quarterback they had long sought. Watson not only met those expectations, but quickly exceeded them, becoming one of the NFL's most dynamic and productive quarterbacks during his time in Houston from 2017 until 2020. Despite some challenges, including roster turnover and organizational instability, Watson's brilliance shone through. Watson's rookie season was nothing short of electrifying. After starting the season as a backup, Watson was named the starter, and from there he took the league by storm. In just 7 games, he threw for 1,699 yards and 19 touchdowns while rushing for 269 yards and 2 scores. His ability to extend plays with his legs paired him with his deep passing accuracy made him a nightmare for opposing defenses. In one of the most memorable performances, Watson threw for 402 yards and 4 touchdowns in a shootout against the Seahawks, further proving he was ready for the big stage. Unfortunately, his rookie campaign was cut short when he tore his ACL in practice, but his brief stint was enough to earn him national recognition as a future star in the NFL. After rehabbing from ACL injury, Watson returned in 2018 and picked up where he left off. He led the Texans to an 11-5 record and the first playoff appearance since 2016. Watson threw for 4,165 yards, 26 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions, while also adding 551 rushing yards and 5 rushing scores. His ability to make plays both through the air and on the ground made him one of the most exciting players to watch. Watson's connection with then-star receiver DeAndre Hopkins flourished during the 2018 season, with Hopkins recording over 1,500 yards and 11 touchdowns. Together, they formed one of the league's most dangerous quarterback/receiver duos. Watson's performance earned him his first Pro Bowl selection and established him as one of the top young quarterbacks at his position. He also helped the Texans win the AFC South. The 2019 season was perhaps Watson's most defining moment as a Texan. He threw for 3,852 yards and 26 touchdowns while rushing for 413 yards and 7 more scores. And create magic in critical moments were on full display. The Texans won the AFC South once again and faced the Bills in the wild card round. In that game, Watson orchestrated one of the most memorable playoff moments in Texans history. Trailing 16-0 in the third quarter, Watson led a furious comeback, including an iconic play in overtime where he escaped what looked like a certain sack, spun out of it, and delivered a perfect pass to set up the game-winning field goal. The Texans won 22-19 in overtime, and Watson's clutch performance cemented his status as one of the league's premier QBs. Despite the Texans falling to the eventual Super Bowl champion, the Chiefs, in the divisional round after blowing a 24-0 lead, Watson's 2019 season earned him another Pro Bowl selection and vaulted him into the conversation for MVP. He did not win it, but most thought he would eventually win it down the road. The 2020 season, which was his last year for the Texans, was bittersweet for Watson. While the Texans struggled to a 4-12 record, Watson had his best statistical season. He led the NFL with 4,823 passing yards, along with 33 touchdowns and just 7 interceptions. His passer rating of 112.4 was the highest of his career. Even without DeAndre Hopkins, who had been traded in a widely criticized move before the season, Watson elevated his game and consistently put up elite numbers. Watson's deep ball accuracy and decision-making reached new heights in 2020. He developed chemistry with receivers like Will Fuller, Brandon Cooks, and tight end Darren Fells. Despite the lack of a strong supporting cast and a shaky defense, Watson carried the Texans' offense with his arms and legs, proving he could be the cornerstone of the franchise. He was named to his 3rd consecutive Pro Bowl and finished the season as one of the most efficient and prolific quarterbacks in the league. However, things started unraveling for Watson in early 2021. In early 2021, the NFL was rocked when Deshaun Watson became the subject of multiple sexual assault allegations. Watson, who had become the face of the Texans franchise, was accused by numerous women of inappropriate conduct and sexual assault during massage therapy sessions. The allegations sparked widespread controversy, legal battles, and cast a shadow over his once promising career. The first sexual lawsuit against Watson was filed on March 16, 2021 by attorney Tony Busby, representing a Houston-based massage therapist. The lawsuit alleged Watson acted inappropriately during a massage session. Over the next few days, more women came forward with similar allegations, and by the end of March, a total of 22 civil lawsuits had been filed against Watson. Most of the women accused Watson of using Instagram to book private massage appointments, during which he allegedly engaged in sexual inappropriate behavior, ranging from unwanted touching to more severe acts of sexual misconduct. The woman, primarily massage therapist, said that Watson's actions had made them feel uncomfortable, violated, and unsafe. Watson denied all the allegations, maintaining that any sexual activity that occurred during those sessions were consensual. His attorney, Rustin Hardin, claimed the lawsuits were an attempt to extort Watson and that the accusations were false. Hardin also emphasized that Watson cooperated fully with law enforcement and the NFL's internal investigation. Meanwhile, both the Houston Police Department and the NFL launched investigations into the allegations. The NFL placed Watson under scrutiny as part of its personal conduct policy, while local authorities sought to determine whether any criminal charges would be pursued. But July of 2021, 10 of Watson's accusers had filed formal criminal complaints with the Houston Police Department. Those complaints were separate from the civil lawsuits, and they escalated the legal stakes for Watson as they could potentially lead to criminal charges. The Harris County District Attorney Office began reviewing the evidence as part of its investigation into whether Watson would be charged with sexual assault or other crimes. In March of 2022, a grand jury was convened to determine whether Watson would face criminal charges. After reviewing evidence and hearing testimony from some of Watson's accusers, the grand jury decided not to indict Watson on any criminal charges. This decision was a significant development for Watson's legal team, the immediate threat of criminal prosecution. However, the civil lawsuits remained active, and Watson still faced consequences from the NFL's investigation later in the year. More on that later. Before the allegations emerged, Watson had requested a trade from the Texans, citing frustration with the team's management and direction. The allegations, however, dramatically altered the situation. Watson did not play during the 2021 season as the Texans chose to sit him amid the ongoing legal issues and his trade demand. This effectively put his career on hold. Watson's once sterling reputation as a leader and franchise quarterback took a significant hit as his name became synonymous with the allegations. Sponsors such as Nike, Beats by Dre, and Reliant Energy distanced themselves and eventually dropped him. His public image was also severely damaged. Despite his legal troubles, several teams remained interested in acquiring Watson, recognizing his talent on the field. After the grand jury declined to indict Watson on criminal charges in March of 2022, the trade market for him reignited. Several teams, including the Falcons, Saints, and Panthers, pursued Watson, but it was the Browns who ultimately secured a blockbuster trade for Watson. Watson at first did not want to go to Cleveland since he wanted to go somewhere very warm. However, if they traded for him, they promised to guarantee all of his contract, in which he very quickly changed his mind. The Browns eventually traded multiple first-round draft picks to the Texans in exchange for Watson and immediately signed him to a fully guaranteed 5-year, $230 million contract, the largest guaranteed deal in NFL history. Despite all of the legal trouble with Watson, the Browns still decided to make the move. The trade, of course, was met with significant backlash, as many believed that the Browns were prioritizing winning over the serious nature of the allegations against Watson.
I understand the whole circumstances is very difficult, especially for the women's side of the fans in this community. I'm not naive to that. I know these allegations is very, very serious, but like I've mentioned before, I've never assaulted any woman. I never disrespected any woman. I was raised by a single-parent mom who has 2 aunties who's her sister, and that's who raised me. I was raised to be genuine and respect everyone and everything around me. So I've always defended that, and I will continue to stand on that. And I just want the opportunity to be able to show who I really am in the community and be hands-on and help people and serve other people.
Despite avoiding criminal charges, Watson still faced potential punishment from the NFL. The league launched an independent investigation into whether Watson violated its personal conduct policy. In August of 2022, after lengthy proceedings, Watson was initially handed a 6-game suspension by an independent arbitrator. However, following an appeal by the NFL, the suspension was increased to 11 games, and Watson was fined $5 million. In addition to the suspension, Watson was required to undergo counseling and the treatment as part of its reinstatement to the league. Watson eventually returned to the field in December of 2022, but the long-term impact of the allegations continued to follow him, both in terms of public perception and his reputation within the league. As the legal battles continued, Watson began settling the civil lawsuits with his accusers. By June of 2022, Watson had settled 20 of the 24 cases against him, with 4 cases still pending. Those settlements were reached without any admission of wrongdoing, and while they allowed Watson to begin moving past the legal quagmire, the shadow of the allegations lingered. In August of 2022, Watson reached settlements with 3 additional women, leaving just 1 active lawsuit by the time he returned to the NFL. However, the damage to his public image had already been done, and questions about his character and behavior persisted. When he returned back to the field in December of 2022 versus his old team, the Texans, he did not look like himself and was very sluggish. He managed to throw for just 131 yards, but threw 1 interception and no touchdowns. In his first season back, Watson did not look like his old self. He threw 7 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, a little over 1,100 yards passing, a 58% completion rating, and an abysmal 40 passer rating. 2023 was not much better. He only played 6 games as he was dealing with a shoulder injury for most of it. However, during his time he was playing, he threw 7 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 1,100 yards, a 61% completion rating, and an 84 QBR. After their upset win over the Ravens in Week 10, he was ruled out for the season as he had to have shoulder surgery. While he was gone, the Browns, led by Joe Flacco, looked better with the former Super Bowl MVP leading the way than the $230 million quarterback. Flacco guided the Browns to the playoffs and was named Comeback Player of the Year. The Browns looked better with Flacco than Watson, which led many to believe maybe Watson is not the guy. Moving forward to this season, Watson has not improved and maybe even gotten worse somehow. So far this season, Watson has almost thrown as many interceptions than touchdowns. The Browns were blown out by the Cowboys in Week 1 and even lost to the Giants a few weeks later. Watson has also taken a lot of sacks this season with 16, which leads the league at the time of this recording. He just looks not inspired at all, as it just seems he is just really out of it and is not interested in playing football anymore. To make it worse, a few weeks ago, more assault charges were filed against the Browns quarterback. According to the lawsuit, it happened in September of 2020. The alleged actions occurred before Watson and the woman in the court filing were set to have dinner at her apartment. During that night, Watson went to her apartment and insulted the woman. According to the report, the lawsuit happened in September of 2020. There is some more other information, but they are very explicit according to the report, and I don't want to include this in the video. If you want to read the rest of the lawsuit, it's on ESPN. This lawsuit was not a part of the other 24 charges against him back in 2022. However, attorney Tony Busby, who defended all the other women, is also defending her as well. The lawsuit also claimed that after the incident, she escaped and used the door as self-defense. When Watson left her apartment, he stormed out, according to the lawsuit, and was very angry. In 2022, after the suspension was finalized, the NFL required Watson to pay a $5 million fee, undergo a mandatory evaluation by behavioral experts, and complete their recommended treatment program before being reinstated. Deshaun Watson's legal battle and suspensions have forever altered the narrative of his once promising career. Now, when you think of Watson, you don't think of how good he was at one time. You think of all the allegations that were charged against him and how that he just isn't the same type of player. His career trajectory and the perception of the NFL handling of the off-field misconduct have a lasting impact on his public image. When Watson returned back to the league following his suspension, it sparked ongoing debates about accountability, justice, and the balance between a player's athletic performance and their personal conduct. For many fans, his actions off the field will forever be a part of his legacy, casting a shadow over his achievements on the field. As Watson continues his career with Cleveland, the long-term effects of these events have already shaped his legacy. The road ahead for Watson will be very tough. He will need to rebuild fans' trust and prove that he has grown from the events that have derailed his career. But at the moment, it's not looking great, and Deshaun Watson might not be a starting quarterback ever again after this season. Let me know in the comments what you think, and if Watson should still be the starting quarterback after next season. I don't think so, but we'll see what happens. And always don't forget to subscribe. If you're already subscribed, I'll take a like. Thanks for watching.